in interactive mode, we'll open mbox.txt, and that is a function built into Python, and then it gives us back a handle. It does not give the data. You can kind of see this when we print out the file handle using the print statement. It doesn't print the lines that are in the file. The lines that are in the file are sort of out there. There could be like, 10 million lines for all we know, lines in the file. The handle's like a little opening outside of your program, and you can talk to the file by opening it. Then you can read stuff. You could, if you're writing the file, you can write stuff, and then you close the file to shut the handle down. But handle is a thing that allows you to get to the file. It is not the file itself, and it's not the data in the file. It's just a wrapper that kind of allows you. So this, if you print it out, it's like that's the file we opened, we're reading it, and encoding has to do with the different kinds of character sets, which we talked about at the end of the last lecture, that Unicode character set, etc. UTF-8 is a great character set. It's probably the most typical character set that you will run into, although you can have different character sets of files, but most of them are UTF-8. So, of course, this is Python. If you make a mistake and there's a file that doesn't exist, we get a traceback, and it blows up. We'll show you in a second how to deal with that. Now, the newline character is an important part of file reading. And in files, in strings, we can put the newline character in by this \n character. And the \n is the character that indicates that we're supposed to go to another line. Go to a new line. Go to a new line. And so we have, what is this? Well, that's a \n. That's a \n. And so if we print it out, we print it this way, we see that the \n is in there. This is how we type it. We actually type \n to Python to indicate that we're supposed to put that there. But if we do a print statement, it actually interprets the \n, and so the \n causes kind of this movement to the beginning. Now the print actually, at the end of this, adds another \n. So the \n that we put in by putting it into this string is that one, and then print always puts a \n at the end. There's actually a way to override that \n behavior by putting something on the print statement, which we'll talk about later. Now, it's important to note that the \n is one character, right? And so even though this x\ny prints this, and then print adds another new line to go down to here, if you ask how many characters, what is the length of this? Well, it's only 3. That's because that's a character, the \n's a character, and the y is a character. So it's a 3-character string. So the \n is a character like all the rest of the characters, but it's only, we encode it by typing \n. It's called an escape, where the / is the escape, \n is a way to say new line, because we can't see it. It's a way for us to encode in a string this non-printable character, this invisible character. The white space, it's part of white space. So as we're reading through the file, we can think of it as a sequence of lines, and we can read these a line at a time. We can also read them a character at a time if we want. And so, but it's more common to say, read this line, read the next line, read the line after that, etc., etc., etc. But the way to best think about this, it doesn't really matter. You can think about it as lines, and we will in most of the programs that we write. But realize that the way when we see this, when we see it like this, it comes back to the beginning, it comes back to the beginning. There's a character in the file at each of these points to say go back to the beginning. It's like hitting the enter key on your computer. And that is a new line. So you have to think that in the file, in order for your text editor and Python and everybody to know where the lines end, you put new lines in the file. And that's another character. So, this looks like an empty line. This line here looks like an empty line, but really it has a single character, and the character is a new line. And it turns out that in a bit we're going to need to keep track of the fact that every line is ended by a new line. So up next, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to read files in Python. So we're going to find that there's a number of different ways that we can read through the file, but the most common way that we're going to read through the file is to treat it as a sequence of lines, and we're going to use the determinant loop, the for loop, to do this. And so what happens here is we get back this handle that opens the file and gives us back the handle. That handle x file is the variable I just named it x file. That's not the data, but it is a sequence. It is that file handle represents to Python a sequence that we can potentially walk through and then get all the lines. And it's the simplest, most beautiful, elegant way to read all the lines in a file. We use the for loop, and we have an iteration variable. This is going to take, when we talk about the file, cheese is going to be the first line, then the second line, then the third line, then the fourth line. So it's like going through a string, but you're going through a file now, and you're getting it line by line. So that's each line. I just picked a variable named cheese so you didn't get confused. Later I'll call this line, but Python doesn't know anything special by naming that variable line. Okay, and so this is, it's the for and the in, and so for, I read this as for each line in the file x, the file handle x file. So run this loop one time for every line and then print it out. So it's actually really quite simple. Okay, other languages like C or C++ or other languages, they have to write while loops with end of file conditions and all kinds of things that make this very difficult. But this is one of the prettiest things that Python has. It's a very, very pretty thing. Okay, so let's talk about what we might do. And we're going kind of back to iterations now. What if we wanted to count the number of lines in a file? Well, this is a basic loop counting pattern. So we open the file, and then, like in all these loops, we do something to sort of prime the loop to get it started, set a variable count to 0. And I'm going to use the variable line that's going to go through each of the lines in the file, for line in fhand, down the file. And it's going to run this loop once for each line in the file, and the variable line is going to change. But all I'm going to do is add count equals count plus 1. And so that's just, like from counters, that's just how you detect. So every time we see a line, we're just going to add 1 to the counter. We're not printing the line, we're not even looking at its data at this point. And then when the line is done, however many times it has to go, out it comes, and we print out line count equals count. And so if we open inbox.txt, this is going to do all this work and then print this line out and say line count is 132,045. So this is a little 5-line program that shows you how to count the lines in a text file using Python. Again, simple and elegant and not too much syntax for you to have to learn. Now it's also possible to read the file as a series of characters, all in one go. Read the whole file in. Now you got to be careful depending on the size of the file. This is going to lead to a string variable with a lot of data in it. Now if it's 100,000 characters, that's actually kind of a small thing. But if it was 10 million lines, that would probably not be good. You'd want to read it one line at a time and process each line and then do something. But mboxshort.txt is a small little file. So we open it and we get back a file object, file handle object, and we call the read method, and that says go through and read all the text and give it back in one big blob, one big string, and I'll put it in imp. And so that's where you have a line, a new line, a line, a new line, a line, a new line. It's not really lines, it's just a sequence of characters with new lines in there to punctuate them. And now you can split that, later we'll see how to split that into separate lines if you want. Now I picked a file that was short, and so this imp variable now has a string in it, and I can use the len function, pass a string into the len function. It says, oh, 94,626 characters. That's kind of a small little file, and perfectly okay to read it all in one go. And so now I say just print the first 20 characters. That's beginning to up to but not including 20, and so it shows the first 20 characters of that little file is a from line, because this is a mailbox file. Now, let's say we're going to do a searching, and we did this loop where you're looking for something. And so we're going to search for lines that have a prefix of from. Okay, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to print those lines out. So there's lots of lines in this file. Line, 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 from. Line, 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 from. Right? On and on and on. And we only want to show these lines, the ones that match, right? That's what we want to do. And so we are going to write an open statement, and then we're going to loop through, and we're going to ask the question, if the line starts with from, print it. So sometimes it's going to skip, 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 and then it's going to run it, and then skip, 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 and it's going to run it, skip, 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 and then it's going to run it. Okay? So that's the basic idea, and then it'll finish when it's all said and done. And so this is like a criteria. This is like a search. We're looking for lines that match the string, that have the string from as their prefix. Now, when we look at the output of this, it's kind of weird. We see kind of these little blank lines that show up. Blank, 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 blank. What's going on here? What's going on?